Hi, this is Michael Veazey of Amazing FBA. Our sister podcast, the 10K Collective, is the world's newest e-commerce podcast. It's geared to the exact needs of 6, 7 and 8-figure Amazon and e-commerce business leaders. It's actionable but focused on how to scale your business and grow really fast for sale or long-term profit, not short-term hacks. We have in-depth talks with real e-commerce sellers and experts in industries like sourcing, team building, and managing cash. To find us, just search your podcast app for 10K Collective. That's 10K for kilo, COLLECTIVE. We are live on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Android, Stitcher, and Spotify, to name but a few of the apps we're rolling out to. Or you can go to 10kcollective.com for show notes or to listen online.
I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Hey, welcome to Amazing FBA. This is your host, Michael Veazey. Welcome to the show. Today we are looking at the third of 10 steps for building a private label-based business, or indeed a custom product-based business. I mean, the distinction between them starts to get blurred. That's fine. Eventually, you need to make your products as differentiated from everything else as possible. We'll talk about that later, but this is about the process of building a business, which isn't the same as how do you find your great product in 3 easy steps. It's a little bit more involved than that. But basically, the simple idea behind this is very simple and based on experience, by the way. I used to teach a simpler model than this, but experience teaches me that you need to go in stages. So you learn to walk before you can run. And then you learn to sort of jog before you sprint. And that's the same with any other skill set, and building your business is no exception. So the first thing we talked about is being careful who you learn from and making sure they have a very broad range of experience on which to draw, rather than just one set of products that one person launched a few years ago, which is the classic kind of background for quite a lot of people teaching private label. And that's not a bad starting point. Having personal success is important. And frankly, there are people who have had much bigger successes than me. Mine have been modest, but what I have done is synthesize together information from lots of different sources across lots of different businesses that I know intimately, which means that there's more, you can generalize more safely on the basis of 50, 60, 70 businesses than you can on the basis of one. Makes sense, right? So that's step one. And step two we talked about, which is about the way of gaining more skill with a small amount of money and not risking a large amount of money by simply, I suggest, using retail arbitrage. There's lots of different ways you could do it as well, and which means that you're just performing very simple arbitrage between your local shops and Amazon. It's very simple. You don't have to do product development. You don't have to do very complicated market research, but it teaches you the basics of dealing with the Amazon back-end system, otherwise known as Seller Central, shipping products into Amazon, dealing with product listings, dealing with customer complaints or feedback, possibly seller feedback, product reviews potentially, and also the marketing numbers and analysis that you've got to do. Can't even say the word, but you get the idea. So that's what we dealt with there. So now we're moving on to what we call the NSL process. So there used to be a phrase that was very common and probably was true before the internet, which is knowledge is power. And it's true that if you have knowledge that other people don't, that is a big advantage, competitive advantage. Now, these days, since the invention of Google, really, I would argue that knowledge is not power anymore. And this is one of the biggest problems that people have when they come to build a business. And the business model is kind of irrelevant. It's even worse with Amazon than it used to be with sort of niche sites or whatever, Google plus your own website, whatever the latest craze is. Guess what? More knowledge is not going to give you more power. For starters, it doesn't give you a competitive advantage because everybody else is receiving similar stuff, but it's the overwhelm that is actually the opposite to power. It's disempowering. It creates confusion, and confused mind doesn't take decisions and therefore doesn't take action. I had people apply to our Facebook group. And by the way, if you feel it will clarify things, if you like my approach, then come and join us. amazingfba.com/FB. That's F for face, B for book. amazingfba.com/FB. But here's the thing. Sometimes people apply for that group and I ask you to answer a couple of questions just so I know where you're at in your journey and just keep control so that we minimize spammers and kick them out quickly, which we do. So it's a very clean space, if you like. But the point is this, that some people I can see with the information from Facebook that they're a member of over 100 Facebook groups. I can't believe, for starters, they're in there regularly. So how can they absorb that information? But also if they do, their brain's going to be mush. That's kind of crazy. Add to that Facebook groups, the podcasts that people listen to. Again, of course, I produce one. You're listening to one right now. And also YouTube videos, not to mention blog posts. And that's a hell of a lot of information to absorb. Now, a lot of quality information is out there for free. It absolutely is. And you can construct your own approach for free, for sure. What I think is knowledge is not power, though. Clarity is power, because with clarity comes focus. And from focus, you can take decisive, decisions and then decisive action. So I think that clarity is the most important thing. And you need a clear, and here's the point, realistic process. So NSL is more like the traditional private label type process. The first thing people come to me saying, I don't know what to sell. What I need is a product name or a keyword. I mean, yes and no, that's true. If somebody gives you a keyword and it happens to work out once the product, that gets you started, and that's a very powerful thing. But what I don't think is that that's a business. That's just partly luck sometimes. What you need is a process that will consistently generate ideas that are worth investigating, and then a process for going through those ideas and filtering them and coming up with strong market research, in other words. So it's what we call N for niche, which goes back to that old saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. It's cheesy, but it's true. So that process of niche research is critical. And what we say is it needs to have two parts. One is obviously keyword research, and everyone's obsessed with that. And there are many tools, and sure, they're good, and we know what they are. It's Helium 10, Jungle Scout, Viral Launch, the big three. And there are other ones that come along from time to time, but everyone's got pretty much the same set of tools. But that's great. But what you should be doing that most people don't bother with, and requires thinking like a human being, not a machine, God forbid, is you define who you're serving and you find out what they want and need. And if you're really smart, you find out what they are looking for that the competition doesn't supply. Right? Once you find that gap in the market, then the keyword research and running the numbers is obviously important as well. But it's that combination of things that the grown-up sellers that I know really do this. And the mentoring clients that I've got who actually implement this get great success because they get really precise guidance from the market. Guess what? When you do your niche research well, that takes care of a lot of your marketing, because your marketing at your launch side, or when you're writing a listing, basically consists of articulating cleanly and well the sort of feedback you've had from your sort of beta testing clients or early stage clients, or even just people that you've talked to. Or when I say clients, I mean consumers, whatever word you use. So niche research needs to be done the right way. A lot of people skip on the person part of it. I think that's critical, and that's a great way to differentiate yourself in a very low-tech way. The S of the NSL process stands for source, and the aims here are to get a quality product that solves that need that you've discovered at a profit. So the main error that people make here is having a very general keyword-driven idea of a product. They pop it into Alibaba and then they just start shopping. And what you really need to do is, again, go back to your original consumer, and you can literally go back to them. You can talk to them in person, or have a conversation with somebody you find in a Facebook group and kind of interview people. And, it's not easy to persuade people to talk to you, but you don't need that many people. It doesn't need to be complicated. Trust me, this stuff is fairly low tech and straightforward. Most people are just too lazy to do it. So if you do it, you stand out above 90% of people, I think. So if you know what people want, you need to define what the product needs to do. At that point, you can then start talking intelligently and precisely to your sourcing partners. And that could be people who source on your behalf, like Ryan Shefford of XQ Manufacturing, or Ash Monga of IMEX Sourcing, to name a couple of guys who are in China who I trust very much and interview for the 10K Collective podcast. If you want to check that out, just put 10K Collective into your podcast app, or go to 10kcollective.com. But whether you do that or you go the Alibaba route and approach suppliers directly, you need to be very, very clear about what your product needs to do. And then you're already on track to A, produce a better quality product, and B, to make sure that the pricing is right. The other two tricks with that is to get quality control inspection done when you've had the products produced. But you need to be very clear what the product needs to do or not do, the defects you want to avoid and the positive things you want it to do, before you can create that. So that comes back down to understanding the consumer's needs, really. And the other thing with the profit and loss, they say profit is made when you buy, not when you sell. So make sure you compile a detailed profit and loss spreadsheet, or even a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. The numbers matter, though. And you need to be very clear about all the costs involved, and just make sure that you've got somebody guiding you, or you're taking training from, whether it's free or paid, taking training from somebody who knows all the costs and the real costs, rather than just a sort of optimistic version. The final part, the L, stands for launch. And really, if you understand your ideal customer, you understand exactly what they need, and they've told you in words, and you understand what the competition offers or their alternatives to your product and what those do and don't offer, you're in a very good position to craft a strong offer, meaning that you understand exactly what the benefits or results need to be, exactly what the problem is you're solving, exactly who your target customer is. So you can show that. If your target customer is ladies over 50, then you could show those in your photographs as models rather than men in their 20s, for example. And that's amazing how often people miss that trick. And then through your photos, the infographics, and of course the text, you can articulate exactly what problem your product solves, exactly who it's for, and why it's better than the competition. And really speaking, if you've done your market research or the niche work well and you're sourcing well, then the launch should not be the biggest thing in your process. If you're trying to depend too much on marketing, it's what Jim Cockram memorably calls lipstick on a pig marketing, meaning if you've got a horrible product that you bought at an over high price and therefore have to sell at an over high price to make a profit, you don't know who you're targeting as a customer, you don't really solve a problem, and it's not differentiated for the competition, guess what? Your launch isn't going to save you from that. Sure, you can spend a lot of money on marketing and advertising, and there is different ways that will cause it to spike up through the rankings, but it's not going to stick. You're going to stick the landing, as they call it, as Brian Johnson of PPC Academy and Canopy Management talks about. You've got to stick the landing, and that's going to happen if your product does the job, has great photographs, of course, that express that, but is also correctly priced, and in the end it will get great reviews or bad reviews based on the quality of the product. So in the end, the NSL process is 3 parts, but the most important parts, I would say, is the niching and sourcing. Launching has got to be done well. Going without a launch plan is not smart, but if you go in with a fantastically researched product and great quality sourcing, you are laying the bedrock for success. And sooner or later, if you do that of 2 or 3 products, you're going to have a success on your hands. So thanks very much for listening to the third part. Next time, we're going to talk about when to scale up and how to scale, which is a critical question that is normally ignored. And then we'll get into niche research, sourcing, and launching in a bit more detail. Thanks very much for listening. Speak to you in the next show.